Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Neom from Lookout Games. Neom is a 1 to 5 player tile-laying civilization game that plays out across 3 ages, 3 rounds of play, in which players are going to be drafting tiles, placing them into their grid to try to score as many points as possible while they build up their resources, their powers, try to avoid disasters and all kinds of things like that. The basic idea is this is a drafting game. You're going to draft a hand of 8 tiles. So at the beginning of the game, well actually at the very beginning of the game, you're going to get a bunch of these tiles over here. These can be used as proxy tiles that you can go ahead and keep these over here. You're going to get these tiles, and then you can use them, setting them aside, and being able to swap them in with your other tiles. So if you ever get a bad draft over here, these are the fun little tiles you get at the beginning of the game to replace those. So you get these little stack of fun little tiles here. That's how you start the game off. And then from there, you're going to go ahead and pick a hand of 8 tiles from Generation 1. You're going to do the same in Generation 2 and 3, and then you're going to score the game. But let's walk through how this works. You're going to have 8 tiles in Generation 1, and you're going to go ahead and look at these tiles, pick one, place it into your city, and then pass the remaining tiles to the person on your left, and then rinse and repeat the process until you're down to one last tile, which gets discarded. So 8 tiles, 7 turns, place them into your city. That's basically all you're doing. Now the reason you're doing this is to ultimately get points. So everything you do is tried and geared towards trying to get as many points as possible as you build out the best possible city. And to that end, we have a few things we're going to talk about over here. We have basic resource tiles such as this one over here. This tile over here, this one actually, let's put this in the right orientation. This tile is going to give us access to this resource. So when we get this tile, we take one of these tiles over here to mark that we have access to this tile. Resources can be bought from other players. If you've played Seven Wonders, it's going to have that kind of vibe. Buying a resource does not deplete it from the other person, but it means this resource is now available for other players to go ahead and buy for me, so it helps my own access to oil, but it also helps my neighbors, and if they buy it for me, I'm going to get money. Resources can be bought. You'll see the little track showing you the different types of resources. There's 3 different levels and have different costs and point values associated with them. I say point values because one of the things you have in the game, in addition to your starting resource over here, as you gather resources, they're going to be worth points at the end of the game, in addition to helping you build up your access during the game. So one of the end game points is going to be resources, and especially with the very deluxe resources at the very end, you can get 10 points for each of those, so it's not a small amount of points to be mindful of. So that's going to be a basic tile over there. You place it into your city, you now have access to that resource. We have some slightly more interesting ones over here. So for example, let's go ahead and grab this one over here. If we have access to this resource, which we don't, we can go ahead and buy it from our neighbor, we can place this out and get an intermediate resource. So sometimes resources are going to require money, so money's going to be over here, you'll get money, and you can go ahead and spend money, plus have access or buy that resource, and then put this into your city, and now we have a new resource available in our city. So again, same basic idea. You're adding a resource. We're going to find the token for that, put it into our city, show players that it's available, but it's a slightly more advanced version because it requires the existence of that resource or for you to have it or buy it from another player. Then we have power plants. You're going to want power in your city. So this over here, this one is going to give you, it's going to cost oil or coal, of which we do have oil, and it's going to give you points, but it's also going to give you access to power in your city, which you do need power in your city, or you'll lose points at the end of the game. If you don't have any power at all, you're going to lose 5 points at the end of the game. So getting one of those is helpful, but you do want to be mindful because residential properties don't often want to be next to anything that produces pollution, and you're going to lose points for being next to pollution in the game, so you want to be mindful of your residential properties access. Then over here, we have another one over here. This one is going to go ahead and to protect you from fire. So this fire department is going to protect all the squares around it from fire, which is a concept you're going to have in Neom, which is in all the ages, you're going to have different disasters that can strike the players. So trying to go ahead and build yourself up with defense from those disasters will help you out when those disasters inevitably strike. So, well, try to plan around the disasters and the bad things that will happen to you in the game. We have another basic resource tile over here, and then let's see if we can just grab one more tile over here. This is going to be, this tile is going to cost 2 money, but it's going to give us 4 money every single round, so it's going to pay us back nicely in the income phase. That little spinny circle over there tells us we get 4 money every single income phase, which is why it's helpful to have that. That's the basic idea of what you're doing over here. You're going to be drafting 8 tiles. You're going to pick and pass until you've played 7 tiles. You're going to go to the next round, rinse and repeat. You're going to go to the third round, rinse and repeat. Along the way, you're getting a slow escalation of the tiles you're gathering, of what they add to your city, of how much they cost, of what the resources they give you. The resources go up in deluxification, which is going to cost more to buy them from other players, and also give you points for access to those as you try to build up the perfect city. Speaking of which, at the end of 3 rounds over here, you're going to score for a few things. You're going to score for the actual point values on the tiles themselves, which sometimes are going to be a straight up points, like 2 points, and sometimes it's going to be variable for some sort of specific scoring criteria, which you will often have to reference the rulebook to go ahead and find. We're going to score for your residential neighborhoods. Residential neighborhoods are neighborhoods are going to score for the size of a larger residential neighborhood. You're going to score for the resources you have, the various types of goods you have. You can score points to them. Every 2 money's worth of point, you're going to lose points for residential neighborhoods next to pollution production tiles. If you don't have any residential neighborhoods or only run residential neighborhood, you're going to lose either 4 or 10 points respectively. So you do want to go ahead and have some degree of people in your city. Well, it's not much of a city. And you'll lose 5 points if you don't have power because, well, power is good. And that's basically going to be your total score for Neom. Which means it's time to dive into the review now, starting off with ease of play. The rulebook is not that long. It is not the best read I've seen in a while, though. It's, well, that makes it sound like it's the worst read I've seen. It's not the worst read I've seen in a while. It's certainly not a very easy read either. It's very, very text-heavy and not the most clear for a game that is fairly straightforward. But so, overall, not the most difficult game to learn. I did feel it was more difficult than it needed to be. Game length is going to come in around 45 to 60 minutes. That can depend on player count. Box says 45 minutes. That sounds about right. And that's basically ease of play. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is, in general, the game is going to have you building out your city in different ways as you play. This is a drafting game. I like drafting. This is a game which you're going to be trying to figure out the optimal way to place tiles down and to try to go ahead and build up your currencies, build up your access to resources, and try to figure out the best way to combine all the tiles being thrown your way in order to build up your city. That's kind of the thing I like about the game. It's building a city, placing tiles, and drafting, which are all things I do enjoy. That's not a lot that I like, though, and there are far more things that I'm going to complain about over here. Well, we'll get into the things I don't like. So starting off with what I don't like over here, I really didn't like the disaster tiles in this game. I don't have a problem with mean things in games, but it is very situational as to how they incorporate those things. There are many games. You're playing Terraforming Mars, you have a little meteors hit by your plants, not the biggest deal. You're playing a game like Bruges where you have a slow disaster coming your way and you have to plan around it, and there is a lot of agency for that. That's not a big deal at all. The way the disasters work in Neom, though, just feels mean. It just feels like annoying and frustrating. It doesn't feel like a rewarding thing that you can plan around, or that's a small aspect to deal with. It feels like you often have to put a lot of resources into trying to avoid how badly it's going to hit you. It's just not a feel-good moment in the game, and I didn't get any satisfaction from their addition, and just felt irritated by them being in the game. Like, if I were to continue playing Neom, I would absolutely remove all disaster-related tiles that I possibly could from the game, because I just don't find them enjoyable. The small print and bad iconography on tiles is certainly a thing that got in the way of the experience as well. You'll frequently have tiles like this where you often have to figure out what is it that they do, and every single tile is in the back of the rulebook, so you can reference and pull everything up, but way too often the iconography of a tile was not clear to me or to the other players playing and had to be looked up and referenced, and in general I'd say it also just doesn't look great. In general, both the art and the graphic design of the game don't really pull me in, and that combined with having iconography that makes it very hard to figure out what tiles are and constantly having to reference the giant smorgasbord. Like, if you have to have an ability reference for every single tile in your game, good on you for having that, but you shouldn't need to have that. It shouldn't be a required component for the game. So on the one hand, kudos to the developer, to the publisher, to having those in the game. On the other hand, just don't make a game that requires every single tile to have a clear iconography as to how it works, because have a clear written listing of how it works, it just shouldn't be needed for the game to function. And so that's another small thing that irritated me over there. And then lastly, I'll just say that the game didn't feel, and granted, this is a slightly older title. I happen to be diving into this because I love Seven Wonders, and once upon a time, people told me to check out Neom because it's like Seven Wonders, and so I eventually did check it out. Here I am now, checking it out, and not working for me quite as much. But I'd say that in general, the game didn't feel like it did anything that interesting. I believe it came after Seven Wonders, and I guess what it does is it takes Seven Wonders and then gives you a grid version of placing it out, but with not enough reason for that to matter. Like, the road placement does matter. You have to be mindful of that as you build your city, and the residential neighborhoods want to be next to each other, and you have the residential neighborhoods not wanting to be next to pollution. So there are small things that do matter, but I don't think this puzzle felt overly satisfying to me, and it just felt like everything else about the game was not that interesting or innovative, while putting barriers and blockers in the way of my enjoyment of the game, from the disaster tiles to the iconography to the poor visual. Again, this is a matter of opinion, but graphic design and art just not pulling me in as well. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, this is a game where you can find yourself resource starved. Very often in the game, you're going to need things in the current round that you need other things from in the current round. So sometimes you can get a little stuck in that. Fortunately, because you're drafting, usually you're not going to get too stuck. You'll have some tiles available to you. But depending on how you build your things out, you might just find yourself having to trade things in for coins because you don't have the resources you need. This definitely has that possibility. And also, if you want a higher player interaction game, this is not that game. There's basically drafting, so there's a player interaction in the sense of you're having to pass tiles. But outside of that, there's a little bit of buying goods and resources, houses, but you're doing your own little village over here. You're building up your own little thing. It doesn't have a significant degree of player interaction either. As far as final thoughts on Neom, I didn't enjoy this one. It's interesting because, like, there's lots of times where I'll play a game where I think to myself that it's not a bad game. It's not a bad game. It's an enjoyable game. It just might not be the thing that causes me as much joy as some of my favorite games. And that's where you'll have a rating of like a 3. Like, hey, it was good. It was fine, but I like other games more. A 3.5 is a game that, you know, I like it more. I have that twinge of I do want to play it more, but there's also so many great games out there that you have to make hard choices in life. Neom just didn't pull me in. Like, I played it the first time, I was like, I gotta play it more to see if I'm missing anything. I played it more, and it didn't really change the experience for me. Ultimately, I don't think whatever it's doing differently from other games in the genre is in any way calling to me. This is not a poorly received game. This is a decently rated game. People do like it, and for me, it just fell completely flat. Ultimately, for me, it's a 2 out of 5. There were very few things that pulled me in and immersed me into what I was doing, and a bunch of things that got in the way of my enjoyment of the game. So for me, unfortunately, Neom is a 2 out of 5, but I kind of say that with the recognition that I don't even know if it's that bad of a game. I think for many other people, like, I think it's in the low 7s on BGG, and I think that probably is a decent average rating for it, but for whatever reason, this one is just not working for me. So Neom, a 2 out of 5, not a game I enjoyed or feel the need to go back to. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, the game this was recommended to me because I like Seven Wonders, I would highly recommend checking out Seven Wonders. I think that they are very clearly doing the same thing. Like, I have to imagine Neom was very heavily inspired by Seven Wonders, and I just think Seven Wonders is a much better implementation of that system. And if you do want that little tile laying gimmick over here combined with a nice little Euro game, I highly recommend checking out Rajas of the Ganges. I think it does a much better job at the little field and road management, making it more rewarding while building it into a different system that is a lot of fun and very, very colorful. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.